serious, what deep family secret were you informed about when you reached a certain age? I found out that my great-aunt was in fact my mum's cousin. One of my great-aunts had her very young, so my grandmother adopted her and raised her as one of her own kids. The great-aunt who had her never told her other children that the person they thought was their aunt was in fact their half-sister. To this day they still don't know. I find this particularly heartbreaking as both my great-aunt and cousin, who are mother and daughter, are now dead. I adore my cousin and I want to tell her so bad, but at this point nearly 75 years has passed without her knowing. It would cause so much heartbreak. Found out at my father's funeral that he was the product of an affair. Turns out my grandmother was a bit of a wild woman. Had an affair and had my father. My grandfather apparently went to the other boys. Said we either raise my dad as one of our own and never speak of it, or they get a divorce. They chose to raise him. I always knew something was off, even as a kid. My dad was rail thin, had jet black hair and dark skin. All his brothers had pot bellies, were bald, and had fair skin. My dad had to know he was different too. Family secrets, man. I had always known my dad was married before, and that he fought for custody of my half-sisters that I grew up with like full sisters. But two things I wasn't told until I was an adult. Point 1. His first wife kidnapped them and held them ransom until my father paid her a lump sum and agreed not to get the police involved. And 2. Part of why she was pissed, went nuts is BC my mom was my dad's secretary and he and his first wife were very much still married when he started sleeping with my mom. Good times. Good times. My father died of a heartache at 39. Most of my life I thought I would follow his fate and lived accordingly. When I turned 40 I was notified that he actually died from being exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam. I was in rehab at the time for severe alcohol abuse for the last 20 years of living fast and hard. Know how fucking stupid I felt? I found out I had a sister who had been given up for adoption. The only reason I found out was the person who informed me no longer felt bound to secrecy after my mum died, and the person who told me had receipts solid enough that I have no reason to doubt them. It also explains why mum freaked out when I told her I'd done a 23andMe test. That my hamster who supposedly escaped when I was at school actually died, and my parents threw it out before I could see. It sounds stupid, but I loved the hamster and was devastated when I found out it ran away. I would be even more if I had found out it actually died at that time. Rip Pixie. You will be missed. My dad had a family before us. This isn't the secret. Just the context before the secret. He got divorced and then met my mom. He had 3 kids with her ex-wife. Jay the oldest son, and the oldest girl, and G the youngest girl. My mum got along very well with them, despite my dad's ex-wife hating her guts. My great-aunts and grandmother were essentially sex-trafficked as children by their own father and uncles. My great-aunt was impregnated at 12 by a man in his 40s and forced to marry him. Once he started getting abusive to their children, he mysteriously left town and no one ever heard from him again. I was a teenager when my mum mentioned that she was a coke addict before she was an alcoholic. She used alcohol to get off coke. At the time she had about 10 years sober. Now she is 34, but yeah. She just casually dropped it one day that actually coke was her downfall. I hate my life, then continue this meaningless existence. But I would never actually do it because I care too much about my friends and the ones I love, and it would kill me twice to see them sad because of my mistake. My dad might not be my real dad. My mum cheated on her boyfriend with him, and not too much later, she became pregnant with me. I don't know which one is my biological father. I only even found this out when my grandma and aunt told me a few years ago. I was about to say distant uncle was in the IRA. But it's only heavily suspected, not confirmed. My grandfather's late cousin is married to Sir Michael Palin. I suppose that's something. My dad was a member of a commune cult for many years. He was kicked out of it for speaking out against the abusive leaders in charge. About a year and a half before I was born. My dad's father was not my dad's father. I had noticed how he and a certain female family friend looked a lot alike. Her father and my grandmother had on. Thanks to my cousin using one of those ancestry websites, we discovered that her dad had a child none of us knew about. Her dad, my uncle, obviously had already died. My great-grandfather saved a young soldier's life and he fought in Germany during WW2. We met up with him last year and he's married with kids. It wasn't exactly a deep secret, but I recall being a bit taken aback when I found out my mom's brother used to be married to my dad's sister. That my brother was my half-brother and had a different father. My mom was married to someone else and was a divorcee when she met my dad. My paternal great-grandfather, he was like 83 at the time, married a 17-year-old teenage girl. It was legal in our country back in the day. My dad has another son, that is 6 months older than me, but was a grade below me, and everyone knew but me. I was 12 before I learned I had a half-sister, and that my mum had been married before she met my dad. It took 33 years, and I found out one of my cousins is not my uncle's son. It's his oldest. When you live with parents who trauma dump, you don't have to wait for a certain age. That my mum had 5 girls because she was trying to have a boy, we all hate her. That my parents married 3 months before I was born. Catholic mum. Just how many men in my family are child molesters, pedophiles? My German grandparents had to flee Germany after the war. Grandpa had an SS uniform, that's why we don't go over there. That my mother had slept with our neighbor's boyfriend.